The Third Republic began in 1945 with the end of World War II. This was a manifestation of world opinion at the end of World War II. They wanted to put an end to war, and they thought that they would have some type of global mechanism to do this. That's a laudable idea, and in a certain sense, it worked because the legal framework applied to everyone. Okay, well, guess what happened? Over this period of time, the United States ruined what was basically a benign form of control, relatively benign form of control, by simply making it apparent that they made the rules for other people and they did not apply them to themselves. Okay? Rules are for other people. That's what it came to. It started back then because we had this conflict at the beginning. As I said before, the fundamental constitution of the Third Republic was the Holocaust narrative. That's what gave legitimacy to this group of people in a way that they had never had it before in history. And now they had a legitimacy that they were going to exploit because they were the propaganda ministry of the United States of America. But what you had here were two now competing systems. Okay, are we privileged? Are we an exceptional nation? Does American exceptionalism make us above the laws? Well, there was a tendency in American history brought over by the Puritans who considered themselves Judaizers, and the fatal flaw in that operation was called sola scriptura, which allowed people like Oliver Cromwell to plunder the Old Testament, come up with justifications for genocide, which he did. He was Gideon. The Catholics in Ireland were Amalek, and he had a right to exterminate them, and he did exterminate them. So, what's it going to be? There are two options, and I describe both of them in my book, Barren Metal, A History of Capitalism as the conflict between labor and usury. We have two options here. Labor, which is the Catholic option, or usury. And after World War II, when the Catholics came into their own during the period of the baby boom, labor was treated with respect. When the war ended, the United States had 60% of the manufacturing power of the world. It had a currency that everyone respected and desired because it was a good store of value. Okay, and that manifested itself by unions, which were strong, which would negotiate with Ford Foundation. The UAW broke the logjam with Henry Ford, and they signed an agreement that guaranteed high wages for manufacturing jobs, and that is the recipe for prosperity, and prosperity is what we got at that point. Okay, high wages, labor is the source of all value. That means you've got to make something if you want to have value. And we did that, and we shared that wealth with the working man who produced it. I remember, again, anecdotal, bumping into a guy in South Bend in a bar. His father he was one of 18 children. His father worked at Bendix as a janitor. A janitor could support a family of 18 children in South Bend, Indiana in the 1950s. That's all gone down the drain. And when did it change? 1973. 1973 is the year, the inflection point when it kicked in. And the United States, at this point, wages stopped going up in 1973. When wages stopped going up, people turned to credit. They turned to usury, and that was the turning point. Nothing changed after that. It only got worse. 1979, Jimmy Carter, for some crazy reason, put Paul Volcker as head of the Fed, and the Fed got into the usury business with the utmost seriousness, paying you 20% on a T-bill, which had no risk whatsoever, killing investment in manufacturing. And that was followed by the junk bond era, in which point Michael Milken, Ivan Boesky basically put the entire industrial base of America on the chopping block, made tons of money, and the manufacturing went to China, which then became the new power on this earth. What happened over this period of time when you switched from labor as the source of all value to usury? You acquired debt. And over a period of time, debt becomes unrepayable. That is where we are right now. This is the graveyard of empires. If you read Baron Metal, you will read the story of the Habsburg Empire, which was also known as the Spanish Empire. They started borrowing money in 1494 from the Fugger family. And the Fugger family were devout Catholics who prided themselves that they never charged more than 6% interest on the loans that they handed out to the Habsburgs. It's still usury. And I don't care how low the interest rate is, it goes up by the same curve, just like that. And we have reached that point. Okay. And now you've got this sense of desperation. Just the same thing that happened with the Fuggers. With the Habsburgs. They come into possession of every single gold and silver mine in the New World in 1492. Took a while to develop it. Okay. 1555, they declare bankruptcy. How can you declare bankruptcy? How can you go bankrupt if you own every gold and silver mine in the New World? The answer to that question is usury, because compound interest takes off after a certain point, generally around 70 years. A floating loan after 70 years becomes unrepayable. Same thing happened to the British Empire. The Bank of England is created to fuel wars, okay? 1694, I believe, 1763, Lord Townshend goes to Adam Smith and says, we can't pay off this debt. Adam Smith says, well, have the colonies pay it off. It didn't work. The colonies, they lost the colonies because they tried to push that debt onto them. You can't pay it off. Okay. So what are we going to do about this? We have reached this point now, and that explains this sense of desperation. Now, what we're seeing here is not only this reckless behavior, but people are waking up to the reckless behavior, and they're starting to talk about it. But we have to get back to basics now. And the fundamental fact is that capitalism is state-sponsored usury. That's what it is. It is a complete turning away from labor, which is the source of all value. It's turning the state over to the usurers for their benefit. The people of the United States do not benefit from this. The usurers benefit from this. And what we've seen during this period of time is the transfer of trillions of dollars from the working class people who create all value into the hands of the 1% of the 1% that earn their money with usury by buying up distressed assets like Citgo or whatever. This is the story. This is the fundamental reality. There is no escape. The desperation has to do with the fact that interest curve is kicking up right now into the realm of unrepayability. Okay. The desperation comes and saying, well, what are we going to do about it? And so the idea is, oh, well, we've got a military. So the military will solve this problem for us. That is exactly what every other empire has done. Okay. They spend the money to create a military. They don't have enough money to keep that military going. They have to borrow money to keep the military going. And the more they borrow money to keep the military going, the deeper in debt they go, the more distressed they're in. And so therefore, they're more inclined to turn to the military to solve their problem. It's not going to work. Now, we're at the end of the Third Republic. All of these things are going to come to an end. The 80-year span of a republic, okay, the 80-year span of each republic, okay, is the same span basically as the interest cycle. After this period of time, you can say from 70 to 80 years, floating loans become unrepayable. The way we started off with this Third Republic had the fatal flaw of not understanding the fundamental issues that they had to understand. First of all, that there's no social progress outside the moral law, that, as John Adams said, we have no constitution that functions in the absence of a moral people, that usury is immoral, and it contradicts everything that we said about labor. We are Americans, which means, in some sense, we're stupid. When it comes to basic principles, Americans inherit this stupidity from the English. We speak English. We're all nominalists. We don't believe in transcendental values. We mock them. The only thing that came close to being American philosophy was a stupid ideology created by John Dewey called pragmatism, which was ludicrous. And now we're paying the price. That's the situation we're in. Okay? The only possible solution to the problem, which is usury, is the seizing of usurious gains and bringing them back into the productive economy. This is stolen money. They have no right to this money, and the only possible level of order of magnitude that can deal with the debt is the amount of money that was stolen from the people of the United States through usury. There is a weird symmetry, not a weird symmetry, but a happy symmetry between those two things. And that's the only way out. I think that's why Prager did that ridiculous cartoon. It was cartoonish in every sense of the word, as if to say it's all about working men and the income tax. This is not about working men. This is about a crossroads where America has one last chance to get it right, and that chance means choosing labor over usury.